Imagine this scenario.
Okay.
It is late at night. The house is totally quiet. You are lying in bed, just drifting off to sleep. You know that weird floaty state right between being awake and dreaming?
Oh, yeah, where your thoughts sort of stop being words and start becoming pictures.
Exactly, where things get a little fuzzy.
The hypnagogic state, that is the technical term for it. It is actually a very fertile ground for altered states of consciousness.
Right. So you are in this hypnagogic state, and suddenly you see a really vivid image.
Like a dream.
No, it is not a dream. It feels realer than a dream. You see someone you love, let us say your sister,
Okay.
and she's falling hard.
Oof.
You see her hit the ground, strike her head on a hard surface. You jolt awake, and your heart is just pounding against your ribs. Now, the million-dollar question here is it just a nightmare brought on by, spicy food? Or is it a warning?
It is the classic premonition scenario.
Yeah.
It is the kind of experience that has literally kept people awake for centuries. That feeling that you have just seen the future and, well, the future hurts.
And usually, like in horror movies or ghost stories, this is where things get really helpless. You know the trope.
The idea that you cannot change fate.
Right. If you see it, it is locked in, full-on Final Destination rules. But today, we are doing a deep dive into a source that says, actually, you can change fate.
Which is a huge relief.
It is. And here is the kicker. Sometimes the solution is not an exorcism or some complex magic ritual.
No.
Sometimes the solution is just moving a rug.
That is what makes today's deep dive so fascinating to me. We are looking at a specific moment in time where high strangeness meets absolute, mundane domestic practicality.
Yeah, it is chilling, definitely, but it is also surprisingly funny.
Yeah.
And incredibly useful.
Absolutely.
So welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a very specific document. We are looking at session 358 of the early sessions, book 8 of the Seth Material.
Yes, and for those tracking the timeline, the date of record here is August 2, 1967.
Set the scene for us a bit. What is the vibe in the room?
Well, we are in Elmira, New York. It is a Wednesday night, 9 p.m. It is August, so it is likely pretty humid. Maybe the windows are open. You can hear crickets chirping outside.
Setting a mood.
Yeah. And we have Jane Roberts, who is the author and the medium for the personality known as Seth.
Right.
We also have her husband, Rob, who is referred to as Joseph in these sessions.
Yeah.
And on this particular night, we have two witnesses present.
Okay, who are there?
Peter Murtough and Marilyn Wilbur.
Got it.
So it is a small, intimate circle. The lights are probably low. And they are not just talking about the abstract meaning of the cosmos here.
No, they are getting into the weeds.
Exactly. They were talking about terrified friends, bad dreams, and even gambling tips.
I love that. Before we get into the rugs of destiny, though, and we will definitely get there, we should just get the housekeeping out of the way.
Good idea.
Just so everyone knows, this deep dive will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, to analyze, and, maybe get a little spooked.
And crucially, to question our assumptions about how reality is actually built.
Yes. So the hook for me in this session is just the sheer variety of stuff Seth covers. You have this profound metaphysical entity, right?
Right.
And in the span of 1 hour, he deals with a vision of a woman falling down stairs. He absolutely roasts a so-called psychopathic medium who cursed a friend.
That part is incredible.
It is wild. And this is my favorite part. He refuses to answer a question because, and I quote, "It is none of your business."
That is such a rare moment.
Yeah.
It really is the shutdown of the century.
I know. But let us start with the scary part, the premonition. This involves Peter, one of the witnesses you mentioned.
Correct. So Peter Murtough comes to the session with a really heavy heart. He tells the group that recently, while he was in that hypnagogic state we were just talking about.
Falling asleep?
Right. He had a vision of his sister Julie. And in the vision, she falls heavily.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he says she could have struck her head. He does not know if she is badly hurt, but the image has been totally haunting him.
And that's just the worst kind of vision, because it is vague enough to be terrifying, but specific enough to feel real.
Exactly.
So he asks Seth point blank, right, is this going to happen? Is my sister going to get hurt?
And Seth does not coddle him at all. Seth confirms it.
He does.
Yeah, he says, and I quote, "Now, as to your picture of your sister, a period approximately 6 months distant and the probability of a bathroom tumble."
Oof. A bathroom tumble. That is really specific.
Very specific.
And dangerous. Bathrooms are just hard surfaces, porcelain, tile, metal fixtures everywhere. You do not want to take a tumble in there.
Precisely. Seth says the probability is there. It is set for about 6 months in the future.
Okay.
Now, usually, this is where a standard fortune teller would say something cryptic like, beware the Ides of March, and just leave it at that.
Or maybe try to sell you a protective amulet for 50 bucks.
Right. But Seth is essentially a mechanic of reality.
Yeah.
He looks at the why of the situation. He looks at the variables.
And the why is honestly hilarious. It is not a curse. It is not bad karma from a past life.
Yeah.
It is interior design.
It literally is.
Hmm.
Seth says that can be averted if no small rugs are used on the floor. This includes rubber-backed rugs.
Rubber-backed rugs. I mean, you cannot get more specific than that.
It completely grounds the paranormal in the physical world. Seth explains that there was some distortion in Peter's vision because our brains always distort the signal a little bit.
Sure, adding their own flavor.
Yeah, but the core event is highly probable. He actually predicts an ugly bruise, I believe by the right ear, and some twisting of a foot.
Wow, that sounds really painful. But Seth says it can be stopped.
Yes, and this is the key takeaway for anyone listening who is interested in how the future works according to the source material. The future is not a single train track that you are strapped to.
Right, it is not fixed.
Exactly. It is a series of probabilities, like a web. Seth basically says, if you change the physical setup, you break the probability chain.
He just tells them to change the environment.
He says, quote, the tumble will not occur if no rugs are used.
So if Peter just calls his sister up and says, hey, Julie, throw out the bathroom rugs, she is totally safe.
Essentially, yes. But here is the mind-bending part of this whole thing. Seth explicitly states, I believe the purchase of a new rug for the room would be involved and she would slip upon it.
Wait, hold on. Let us pause on that.
Yeah.
The purchase of a new rug.
Yeah.
So she has not even bought it yet.
Correct. The accident is caused by a rug she will buy in the future.
That is wild. That is some serious Minority Report stuff right there. It is pre-crime, but for home decor.
It really is.
So the advice is completely preemptive. Like, do not buy that cute bath mat you're going to see at Target in 3 months.
Exactly. The probability exists in the future, just waiting to be activated by her making that purchase. If she does not make the purchase, the whole timeline shifts. And then Seth adds a detail that is so bizarre, it kind of gives me goosebumps.
What is it?
It is the kind of detail you just cannot make up. He mentions that there is a possibility that he does not quite understand, where for one reason or another, newspapers might be laid upon the floor in that room.
Newspapers.
Yeah. He says perhaps beneath dripping clothes.
Newspapers under dripping clothes. Who even does that?
Well, that is what makes it feel so authentic to me. Seth, as a non-physical consciousness, is just looking at the visual data of the future.
Just reading the tape.
Right. He sees newspapers on a bathroom floor. He does not know why they are there. Maybe she's painting the room.
Or maybe she is hand-washing a wool sweater and laying it flat to dry.
Exactly. He just reports what he sees.
But newspapers on a wet tile floor that is basically a slip and slide, that is an absolute death trap.
It really is. So he warns against that too. He says, in this way, you switch from one set of probabilities to another, and in this way to your advantage.
Switching probabilities. I really love that phrasing. It makes life feel like a choose-your-own-adventure book.
It does.
You turn to page 45, you buy the rug, you slip, you turn to page 46, you leave the floor bare, and you walk out safely.
That is the perfect analogy.
Mm.
And notice Seth's tone here. He is not being mystical at all. He is acting like a safety inspector.
Yeah, he really is.
He even suggests an 8-month period of keeping the floor clear just to be completely safe.
It is so practical. It reminds me that we so often think of spirituality as, lighting candles and chanting.
Right.
But sometimes the absolute most spiritual thing you can do is just remove a tripping hazard so your sister does not crack her head open.
It is all about awareness.
Hmm.
Peter's intuition gave him a glimpse of a probable future. And instead of just sitting around worrying, he got actionable data on how to alter the variables.
So moving from physical safety to psychological safety, the next segment of this session is like a scene from a reality TV show where the drama just gets turned up to 11.
Oh boy.
We have to talk about the roast of the medium.
This is a heavy segment, but it is very, very important.
So the context here is that a friend of the group, Pat Norelli, who lives in Boston, had gone to see a female medium.
Yes.
And this medium basically terrified her.
She did. The medium told Pat that she was under the influence of an evil eye. She told her she would never have a happy day as long as she left.
Can you imagine? You go to someone for guidance, maybe you are in a vulnerable spot, and they just tell you, sorry, you are cursed forever, have a nice life.
It is deeply irresponsible.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is psychological malpractice. Pat was naturally super alarmed by this. She called Jane and Rob long distance, which, by the way, was a big deal and very expensive in
Oh,
1967.
absolutely.
She was asking for help. She really wanted Seth's take on this curse.
And Seth does not hold back. He does not play the whole, well, everyone has their own truth card.
No,
He goes straight for the throat.
he absolutely dismantles this woman. He calls the medium a severely damaged personality.
Yeah, it is a serious burn.
It is a clinical diagnosis from a non-physical entity. Seth explains the mechanics of what this medium is actually doing. He says she herself projects highly negative feelings outward onto her sitters and then picks these up again on a subconscious level and reacts to them.
Wait, let us unpack that. So she's not seeing a curse on Pat.
No,
She is throwing her own bad vibes onto Pat and then reading them back.
precisely. It is a complete feedback loop of negativity. Seth says she tends to condemn her sitters because she is frightened of condemning herself.
That is profound psychological insight. It is pure projection.
It is. And then comes the line that I think sums up so much of what we now call toxic spirituality.
Let's hear it.
Seth says she is sincere and sincerely deluded, a psychopathic personality who delights in arousing fear in others.
Sincerely deluded. That is actually really scary.
Yeah.
Because it means she believes it.
Yeah.
She's not a con artist faking it for money.
Right.
She is a broken person hurting others because she is hurt.
Yes. And Seth points out the extreme danger here. If Pat believes her, Pat might actually create that reality for herself through fear.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Seth is intervening to break that fear. He is cutting the cord.
It is interesting that Seth, who is technically a spirit or a mediumistic personality himself, is the one calling out the medium industry. He is like the internal affairs cop policing his own precinct.
He has always been very critical of superstition. He differentiates very clearly between legitimate perception and this kind of fear-mongering.
Right.
He reassures Pat immediately. He tells her, bluntly, there is no such thing as an evil eye.
And he also gives her a little dating advice, right? Because what is a psychic reading without asking about your boyfriend?
Of course. Pat was seeing a fine gentleman friend at the time. Seth says with a smile, at this time you are not wasting your time.
A ringing endorsement.
Well, a qualified one. He adds, no more should be read into that last sentence than I've given you, however, for I will not predict for you the outcome of the relationship.
And that leads us perfectly into the next section.
The boundaries.
Yes, the boundaries, the big no. Because while Seth is happy to tell you to move a rug to save your sister's ankle, he draws a very hard, very clear line when it comes to prying into other people's business.
This is, in my opinion, the most philosophically significant moment of the whole session.
Set up for us.
So Rob, Jane's husband, asks a question. He's really just being curious.
Okay.
A dentist's nurse had told him about a dream she had recently had. And Rob thinks it is just an interesting data point for the session.
Sure.
So he asked Seth, do you want to say a few words about the dream the dentist's nurse told me about today?
Which seems harmless enough. Just, hey, what did that dream mean?
But Seth's reaction is immediate and totally blunt.
What happens?
There's a long pause. Jane's eyes are closed. And then he says, I do not like to go into this particular data. Quite frankly, it is none of your business.
Boom. None of your business.
Yeah.
I feel like Rob must have just withered a little bit in his chair right there.
Rob actually notes in the transcript, to my knowledge, this is the first time in all the sessions that Seth has given such an answer.
Wow.
He even tries to defend himself a bit,
Yeah.
saying he was not trying to pry, he was just looking for information.
But Seth's reason is not just about manners, is it? It is not just him saying, hey, it is rude to gossip.
No, it is not.
It is deeply metaphysical.
Correct. And this is where we get into the observer effect.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Seth explains, the affair is highly personal. The events may or may not occur, and I do not want to add to their probability, you see, by any statement.
Whoa, let us stop and really look at that. I do not want to add to their probability.
Think about the physics of that statement. The dream the nurse had was likely precognitive, meaning it was about a future event.
Right.
That event is currently just a probability. It is not hardened into physical fact yet. If Seth, who is a figure of authority and immense energy, focuses on it, describes it, and validates it out loud.
He locks it in.
Yes. He adds weight to it. He actually energizes that probability.
That is terrifying and empowering at the exact same time. It means that simply knowing the future can help cause the future.
Exactly. Observation is an act of creation here. If the event in the dream was negative, or even just intensely private, discussing it brings it much closer to reality.
Wow.
By saying it is none of your business, Seth is actually protecting the nurse and protecting the fluidity of her future.
That is a lesson in privacy that goes way beyond social norms. It is like, do not look at it or you might accidentally make it happen.
It implies a tremendous responsibility for anyone with this kind of perception.
Hmm.
We are all curious. We all want to know what is going to happen next.
Of course.
But Seth is saying there's an ethics to knowing. Just because you can use ESP to look into someone's private life really does not mean you should.
It is the difference between being a voyeur and being a helper.
Very well said.
Like with Peter's sister, the goal was to prevent actual harm. Move the rug. With the nurse's dream, it was just idle curiosity. And curiosity can be genuinely dangerous if it messes with probability.
Precisely. It is a distinction we should probably all keep in mind, especially in the information age.
Yeah.
Just because the data is available does not mean we should engage with it.
Okay, so we have covered deadly rugs, toxic mediums, and the ethics of cosmic privacy.
A full plate.
Truly. Now I want to jump into what we are kind of calling the rapid fire round.
Let us do it.
Because this session is just absolutely packed with these little nuggets of high strangeness.
It really is a potpourri of the paranormal.
Let us talk about possession. Because Peter, poor Peter, he is really going through it in this session.
He is having a week.
He asks about another incredibly weird experience.
Yes. Peter asks about a time he was lying in bed and he felt his friend Ferd actually entering his body.
Which sounds like the start of a horror movie. I felt him enter my body.
Right. Peter thinks it is a literal possession. He thinks Ferd's spirit is jumping into him.
And what does Seth say to that?
Seth says, essentially, calm down. It is not nearly that dramatic.
Typical Seth.
Yeah. He tells Peter, you are becoming aware of higher levels of your own personality. The sensation was your own reaction to the psychological presence of your friend Ferd.
So Ferd was just thinking about him.
Ferd was likely projecting a strong thought or a telepathic message toward him. Peter picked up on that psychological presence.
Okay.
But because Peter is human and focused in the physical world, his brain translated that signal into a physical sensation.
Ah, so it is a translation error. Like the software received an email, but the hardware interpreted it as a physical handshake.
That is a brilliant analogy. Seth says, because of your own personality makeup, you will lean to physical interpretations.
That makes so much sense.
It is a great reminder that our bodies often completely misinterpret spiritual data. We feel a chill or a touch or a heavy weight on our chest, but it's really just our nervous system frantically trying to make sense of non-physical energy.
It honestly makes the whole ghost experience feel way less scary. It is not a demonic invasion. It is just a really intense phone call you were not expecting. Okay, next up in the rapid fire, gambling. Because apparently everyone in the 1960s was trying to beat the ponies using ESP.
Oh, it was a hugely popular application of psychic research back then.
I bet.
In this case, it involves Peter's brother, Steve. Seth had previously told Steve not to bet on a specific race, the August 20th 5 and 10 race.
And Steve was annoyed about that, right? Because he wanted a hot tip.
Steve was extremely bothered. He wanted Seth to just say, yes, bet on this horse, you will be rich.
Obviously.
But Seth doubled down. He told them at one time, many probabilities pointed in that direction. At this time, less than half of those chances remain. The odds are very much against it.
But then Seth gives this whole lecture on why he will not just hand them winning lottery numbers.
This is what I call the crutch argument. Seth says high expectations are good, but they must not be used as a crutch.
Basically saying, do not use me to cheat at life.
He is saying that Steve needs to develop his own abilities and his own confidence. If he relies on a disembodied voice to make money for him, he is not growing as a person.
He is just becoming dependent.
Exactly. Seth says, your brother Stephen must have faith in his own abilities, for these represent his freedom.
It is tough love. I could tell you who wins, but then you wouldn't learn anything.
It prevents a dependency that Seth is notoriously against. He wants people to stand on their own 2 feet, not lean on him for every little thing.
Speaking of standing on your own 2 feet or, falling off them, let us loop back to the predictions for the women in the group, because Seth gets very specific about romance and travel here.
He really does.
Yeah.
He talks about Marilyn and Peter's sister, Julie. For Julie, the one with the rug problem, he sees a potential trip to Australia.
Australia. That is a massive trip for 1967.
Huge. And Seth links it to a very specific man. He describes him, saying he's a male who wears glasses in his leisure hours, brown hair, and with the distant Detroit connection, or a strong one, with the individual and cars.
Detroit and cars. I mean, that is classic Americana right there.
It is. Seth says if she meets this man specifically between October 1st and 5th, or in November, he will be instrumental in arranging the trip.
I just love how granular that prediction is. Glasses in his leisure hours, like maybe he wears contacts at work, or safety goggles.
It implies a level of remote viewing that is incredibly detailed. And for Marilyn, the long-haired blonde friend, Seth predicts a new element. A new person coming into her life who will be highly beneficial.
So it is optimistic.
It is. Despite the scary rug prediction earlier, the overall tone for their future is very positive. New people, new travels, beneficial connections.
You know, looking at this whole session from top to bottom, it really feels like a microcosm of life.
How do you mean?
Well, you have the scary stuff with the fall, the annoying stuff with the bad medium, the tempting stuff with the gambling, and the hopeful stuff with the romance and travel. And Seth is just navigating them through all of it with this calm, kind of dry wit.
He really is the ultimate guide because he does not take the drama seriously, but he takes the people very seriously. He cares about their growth, and he genuinely cares about their safety.
So, as we start to wrap up this deep dive into session 358, what would you say are the big takeaways for our listeners today?
Well, first and foremost, check your rugs.
Seriously, if you have a small rubber-backed rug in your bathroom, maybe just move it.
Just in case.
Yeah.
But more broadly, understand that the future is probable, not fixed. Peter's vision was not a death sentence, it was a weather forecast.
Rain is coming. Bring an umbrella.
Exactly. The rug was the umbrella in this scenario. You have the power to change the physical variables of your life to alter the outcome.
That is extremely empowering.
Second takeaway. Be careful who you listen to. There are mediums and spiritual teachers out there who project their own damage onto you.
Yeah, the sincerely deluded ones.
Right. If a spiritual message makes you feel small, fearful, or cursed, absolutely reject it. That is not insight, that is just projection.
Trust your gut, not just the person holding the crystal ball.
And third, respect the privacy of the universe.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Just because you can know something about someone else does not mean you should. Observation has weight. Do not add weight to probabilities that are not yours to carry.
It is none of your business. A life motto we could probably all use a little more of.
Indeed.
Before we sign off, we absolutely have to give credit where credit is due. This incredible material comes from the Seth Material.
Specifically, the Early Sessions, Book 8, published by the New Awareness Network.
If this conversation sparked something in your brain today, if you want to read the full transcripts, see the notes, and really get into the weeds of this stuff, you need to go directly to the source.
We highly encourage you to study the Seth Material books yourself. You can visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com/the early sessions. There is a lifetime of wisdom there, just waiting to be unpacked.
And hey, maybe buy a new rug while you were at it. A safe one.
A large, non-slip one.
Exactly. Now, I want to leave you with one final thought. Seth mentioned something in passing during the session that we did not fully unpack, but it has really been sticking with me.
The theorem.
Yes. Seth said, there are times when all probabilities point in one direction, and I believe there is a mathematical theorem that defines such occurrences, in which case the future is indeed locked.
It is a chilling thought. Most of the time, we can move the rug. We can change the outcome. But Seth implies there are moments, rare moments of mathematical lock, where the momentum of events is so strong, nothing can stop it.
It makes you wonder, what events in our lives are the rugs we can move? And what events are the storms we just have to weather?
And how do we tell the difference before it is too late?
Something to think about tonight as you drift off to sleep. Just maybe check the floor first.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Good night.